So for me, so I'm running for the West Ward City Council seat, and that seat is being vacated by Joe McCallum. And so the way that we approach it is that we're running for that seat, and that when we look at the past two races, when we think about Joe McCallum was the councilman in the last two terms, he was supported by the mayor. Joe McCallum was a runoff both times. So we do know that there are folks inside the ward who, while they're extraordinarily supportive of the mayor, may not necessarily vote the entire ticket. And so what we want to do is make sure we introduce ourselves to all the people throughout the ward and let them know that there is an alternative. There's someone that you can support. And just, as we introduce ourselves, we introduce our vision, we let folks know the kind of leadership that we want to bring to the ward. And we think that if we do that, we can be successful. And we think we've been successful thus far. We've knocked on every door so far on the board. I mean, there's a couple of buildings we haven't been into just yet. We've knocked on every door. The responses that we've been getting have been powerful. We've, politics unfortunately requires us to raise some money, and we've been successful raising money as well. So we're at about $80,000 for the campaign, and we think that we'll have enough resources to carry us through Election Day, and on Election Day make sure that we have a robust operation so that we can win this thing.
You talk a little bit about the ground game you envision for the campaign, and also your communications operations for the campaign.
Yeah. So the ground game is, for us, we talked earlier about ensuring that one, we knock on every door and not just assume what people want, but ask deep questions and honest questions about what folks want, and then listen to those responses and allow those responses to shape the way that we campaign, the way that we develop our policy platforms, which is part of the reason why we decided we're going to cover the entire ward, and then we're going to work together with some of the folks that we've identified to develop our policy pieces. But we think that, if we talk to folks, if we put out a compelling message, which we think we have, and if folks see us as the kind of candidate that can bring some integrity back to that West Ward Council seat, that, we have a really good chance to ward. I think that, the mayor's coattails are certainly a real thing, and we don't want to dismiss or ignore that, because folks do feel like the mayor's done a good job, and I think in many respects he has. But the West Ward Council seat is something altogether different. And so we're asking folks to consider that seat in particular when they go to the polls on May 10th.
And I wanted to ask you about this too. So I looked at the results on Election Day of this year, and the West Ward seemed to be more active than usual.
Yeah.
Is that because of the coming council race? You're already running operations to a certain extent?
I believe absolutely. I think that us being out there, us knocking on doors, and I suspect, I haven't seen a ton of what the mayor's been doing, but I suspect them knocking on doors and talking to folks as well has generated a bit of excitement. I mean, we've been out since July now, so you're talking about 4 months before the before the November race. So folks have kind of been seeing people at their doors and have been thinking about politics for quite some time. And also, it's a credit to the Murphy team as well, who we bumped into often while canvassing. Sometimes they will be on one side and we say, let's give that side a little break until they complete it, just so that they don't get back-to-back door knocks. So we would often, see those folks out there as well. So I think the West Ward is awake. I think the West Ward, recognizes there's a real race coming up, and I think the governor's race is one indication of that, and I think we'll see a big turnout come May.
Do you have a message to that person in your ward who may be tuned out at the moment, who may have turned his back on the process? What's your message to him or her?
That's a great question. I think that, for me, I would say, through everything we do, we participate in politics, right? So if you're a homeowner and you pay taxes, that's one way to participate in politics. If you're a renter and you pay your rent, that goes towards somebody else's taxes. So all of us participate in politics through our everyday lives. And I think that what voting does and participating in elections do is it gives us a greater voice. It allows us to participate in a deeper way. So I would tell folks, and I would encourage folks to stay engaged with the process, even if you've been disappointed, because it's through organizing and it's through creating spaces like this that I think we can create the kind of change that we want to see, not just in the ward, but throughout the city, and hopefully ultimately throughout the world. So, we want folks to participate because you're already participating.
What continues to inspire you in the political process?
I'm inspired by ordinary people. When you confront everyday people, when you knock on their door, you're walking down the street, everyday people who have hope. I mean, so you're not, these communities, black and brown folks in these communities, man, they are filled with hope and filled with optimism. These folks, we've survived so much in this country, and I think folks, you know, that spirit of survival is very much alive in the people that I meet every single day. And, you know, who would I be to kind of walk around with my head down, given what folks who came before me and folks who are dealing with things that I can't even imagine in the ways in which they walk around, you know, encouraged every day. So, you know, I think it's that. It's the power of ordinary people to make a difference every day in their personal lives, and that I think ultimately makes differences in the community, the lives of the community.
Why local politics for you? You've been at the state level, you've worked at the city level, you've been an attorney who's worked at all levels, and yet you've chosen a local race for your first, sort of, notwithstanding your school board races when you were younger, but this is really your entrance. It's not a congressional race. It's not a legislative race. Why a local election?
I think city council is the office closest to the people. I think city council is the first office that I find that people go to when they have a problem. You know, and that's whether you have a problem with garbage collection, whether you have a problem with violence in the community, whatever the issue is. I think folks often go to city council first. I think that you know, we can use that relationship with people, that close contact with people, to begin to build a community that reflects the wishes of folks who experience those different challenges. So for us, you know, it's really about this being the office that's closest to people that we care about, office closest to the community. And that's why for me, local politics is really to me, the most important. Did you? That's why it's